Welcome to the Mojo Market Report. Here's your hosts, Dave Sturchio and Chris Gueci.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a very special Mojo Market Report right here. It is Dave Sturchio Chris Gueci, and of course, we are joined by Mike Renner of PFF today. I am very excited about this. We are right here. We are in the thick of things as far as draft season is concerned. Mike, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
Yeah, absolutely. We are very intrigued at your latest mock draft. And of course, this has everything to do with the Mojo market, because now a lot of these guys that you were betting on and investing in when they were in college have turned the corner. They have done their combines. They've, all the news and the rumors that are circling around some of these guys. It's interesting to see how all of these mock drafts are playing out. I am so tired of looking at the same mock drafts over and over again. So this is definitely a refresher. This is definitely some of the moves that I've seen that you've made here are very, very interesting. And let's just start it off, man, because I'm very, very excited to see where some of these young quarterbacks go. I got to get your take first before we go into your mock draft. The hype that surrounded Anthony Richardson going into the combine, have you now jumped even higher? And no pun for his vertical jump, but have you jumped even higher for this guy already?
Not really. I mean, to me, you saw that on tape, right? He was a freak. That's why he was getting hype in the first place. If he went there and ran a 4.8, no one would even have been talking about him. He wouldn't have even been invited. So he was invited and is in this realm of prospect because he is as special as it gets as a runner. And with that physical ability, with the running ability paired with that big arm, that someone's just hey, that unique rushing ability, that's winning today at the NFL, whether it's Jalen Hurts, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's Lamar Jackson, you can win with that. And it kind of brings you a high floor. So everyone's just kind of wants that element to their offense more so. They're seeing how much that can do. And so the specialness that he brings to the table as a runner, obviously it showed up in the combine measurables, but if you watch the on-field drills for Anthony Richardson, he was not accurate. The accuracy has not been fixed. He's not all of a sudden going to change that overnight. That one you're going to have to bank on 2 years in, 3 years in. Hopefully that gets fixed.
Now, my question about accuracy particularly is that's one of the things that I feel like it's the hardest to teach. Either you have it or you don't. You could do mechanics, you could do all these things, but improving the accuracy, even through mechanics, when you're on the field and it's time, you got a defensive lineman in your face. I guess the point that I'm making here is they're saying Richardson's a year or two away from being a starter, but the modern day NFL, that doesn't really work. So is he ready to come in and step in and be a starter right away because of the physical tools? Or do you think it'd be a better situation for him to be a backup for a year?
Ideally, he's a backup for a year because truly does need to fix things about not, his actual, how he throws the football. And I do agree that accuracy is difficult to fix. Not everyone's Josh Allen. Josh Allen's the outlier. Most of the guys that come in with accuracy issues, that follows them throughout their NFL career. And if you just watch
Josh Allen even still kind of has some issues with his accuracy or decision making, I would say. So
exactly. You're not going to turn Anthony Richardson into Joe Burrow. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. And even Allen's tape, he threw a baseball pitcher back in the day. He completely overhauled his form. I don't think that's, with Richardson, I don't think you're overhauling his actual throwing motion. You're just overhauling, everyone keeps saying his feet are inconsistent, his feet are bad. And they are, but even when his feet are set and perfect, he does have some inconsistency. So you're just hoping it gets a little better. But I do think with Richardson, like you said, there's no wait and see for a lot of teams, especially when you're drafting in the top 5. So hopefully it goes to a spot where they already have maybe a veteran that can at least play year one and let him kind of get all those technical things corrected. So he's not thinking about those and also thinking about how to attack NFL defenses. He has those down pat before he's ever seen a football field. But more often than not, that's not the case. So I do think wherever he goes, if he's starting year one, I would just use him as a glorified running back at that point. Run the wing tee if you want to. Don't subject him to having to drop back and pass 40 times a game. That just won't end well.
Almost like Willis' situation over in Tennessee, where he was a gadget guy, or he wasn't being asked to throw the ball 40 times a game when he was in there.
And it didn't seem like the right fit for them to pick him out of the gate anay, because they don't operate under shotgun.
They really don't.
I never understood that pick to begin with. But I guess now that we see Derrick Henry maybe being shopped around the combine, they may be shifting their offensive
philosophy. Yeah,
overall, but
maybe.
we'll see.
So let's get to that first top 5 at the very least for your mock draft, because I was interesting to see that you already made some trades. So some teams are trading up, some teams are not waiting at all, and you have the number 1 overall pick as of yesterday. So again, I know you're probably going to have 75 more mock drafts before this thing all gets said and done, right? I mean, everybody wants to make sure they have it as accurate as they possibly can. So right now, as it stands in the middle of March, you have Bryce Young going number 1, Alabama quarterback, but it's not to the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears make the trade and the Texans jump. Do you think it's a good spot? Because I've seen some rumors now over the last couple days that Jimmy G might be a nice landing spot for a Houston Texans, even if they land a Jimmy G. Is this still the move for the Texans? Are they looking for their future franchise guy in Bryce Young?
It has to be. Now there is some conversation or some thought to the idea that, hey, we're really bad still. If you're the Houston Texans, we may be a whole year away. And now obviously you wouldn't want to draft, you want to sign Jimmy G in that case, but like you may be picking top 5 again next year. Next year's quarterback class with Caleb Williams, with Drake May, those guys are special too. So you could almost parlay that number 2 pick into more picks in this year's draft and then get that quarterback next year. But that's always a risky scenario. You're close enough this year. To me, Bryce Young's the guy. If I'm drafting a quarterback in this class, I think he's head and shoulders above everyone else in terms of on-field ability. And so if I'm the Texans, I'm not waiting around and seeing if someone jumps the Bears. I'm offering them a package that, yeah, it robs me of some draft capital, but it's well worth it if Bryce Young turns out to be a dude.
I also think in touching on the Jimmy G thing, I don't think he's that much of an upgrade over a Davis Mills who they already have.
Yeah,
right. I mean, so like they could kind of bring him in and just usher along until Bryce Young is ready. I don't think it makes sense for them to add the millions of dollars, but it does. Having a veteran that's been experienced in the postseason, it makes some sense. But I can't see the Jimmy G thing.
I don't know. It's just something I've read. So it's on the interweb, so it's got to be true.
That's true.
Exactly. So in the top 5, you do, and we've talked about Anthony Richardson already, but in the top 5, you have 3 quarterbacks going. And in kind of the order that people have already kind of got a feeling. What are your thoughts on CJ Stroud? Look, we have a lot of our personal friends who decided to kind of write off any aspect of Ohio State quarterbacks succeeding at the next level. Clearly, we've seen what Fields can do, but now CJ Stroud is the next man up. Is he going to break the mold of can we stop talking about how Ohio State quarterbacks don't make it in the NFL?
Mike Tomczak is the only Ohio State quarterback with a win. That's not
wrong. You're not. Yeah, I was going to say you're not wrong.
I'll just say this. I'm not going to be overconfident and say he's for sure going to be the guy. If you know or have seen quarterback evaluation over the past decade, you know that making sweeping declarations like that often turns out poorly for you. But I will say that he plays the position completely differently than Dwayne Haskins did, completely differently than the way Justin Fields did at Ohio State. And obviously with those guys, relative success as passers in the NFL, that's probably a good thing that he looks a little bit differently. But there is things about Ohio State's offense that just aren't translatable, and their downfield attack, the offensive line that those guys play behind, they sit and hold the ball to the bitter end because that's what's demanded of them in the offense. And so Stroud, to his credit, as opposed to Fields, as opposed to Haskins, gets the ball out a lot quicker. He works the middle of the field a lot better than either of those guys did.
Joe Burrow spent,
and I think he's a little more accurate
too, though. Right? He did spend some time there, but he's not really an Ohio State quarterback.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count at all. Yeah, so again, interesting to see that. And as far as the Mojo market is concerned, I want to say that I want to preface this by I'm highlighting guys out of the skill positions because that's the guys you can invest in, right? So it makes more sense to highlight some of these quarterbacks, highlight some of the receivers. Speaking of receivers, I do want to touch on Will Levis in a second, but I want to say the first receiver you have going is the Texans building again at 12, Quentin Johnson out of TCU. What can you tell me? What separates him from the rest of the pack? Because of the way I look at it and the way I watch the combine, there is a lot of talent at the wide receiver position. Why is this guy the first one to go?
It's size. The rest of this receiver class are sub 200 pounders, are mostly 6 foot and under, are like those, jitterbug route runners. A lot of them are going to be playing in the slot in the NFL, but Quentin Johnson at nearly 6'3", 208 pounds, over 40-inch vertical, over 11-foot broad jump. Like, he is that explosive outside vertical threat that if you want one in this class, there's just him. There's no other guy. So I think that's going to push him up draft boards because of just the scarcity. and you watch him on tape, and he is special with the ball in his hands. Now, obviously, he has some like concerns about route running, hands, whatnot, but the athlete is a special athlete.
So I'm also seeing it. I didn't want to skip over Will Levis, and obviously the talk of the town was that he couldn't wait to show off his cannon of an arm. You have him mocked here to the Raiders, and the Raiders right now are, I guess you can kind of still see them in the situation with Rodgers. I know they haven't completely ruled it out. It seems like all signs are pointing to the Jets. We'll get to that in a second. But Will Levis, your critique on him and why? I mean, if he's drafted 7th overall to the Raiders, he has to be a get in there right now kind of guy. Because I right now, I understand that Josh McDaniels brought his guy over from New England, and we saw him for about a cup of coffee last year when they benched Derek Carr. But is Will Levis the kind of guy that can come in right away, challenge him for the open, kickoff starter?
I think so. I think that's one of his biggest selling points is that, he played under 2 different NFL offense coordinators. He operated under center. He's done a lot of the things. He wins from the pocket. Like, that's where all his plays are. And he has that cannon of an arm. So, like, a lot of the things that he does are very NFL translatable, which is why, the stats may look bad, but NFL evaluators see him and are like, he wins in the ways you have to win, which is under pressure, where he had more yards than anyone else in this quarterback class last year, to where you feel good about him projecting and at least being able to handle an NFL offense. Now, maybe you can chase more upside in guys like Richardson, guys like Bryce Young in this draft class, but I feel like you feel confident in Will Levis's floor.
Your boy. I was looking for the Jets pick.
I've been searching for somebody to get me to turn the corner on Levis. Like, for whatever reason, I've been hearing, or a lot of the guys that I talk to about him say it's like this year's version of Zach Wilson, where it's like he looks good in the combine and he's a good T-shirt and shorts guy. But when you throw him on the field, which I don't typically agree with, I mean, I'm not the biggest college football guy, but I saw him succeeding against SEC defenses. That's what I saw. So I guess I would say top 10, but I think Anthony Richardson's injection into the top 10 almost makes me fear that Levis will be left out.
He might wind up like your boy, Aaron Rodgers. They're just waiting and waiting. Yeah, you never know.
And I think he's going to be the one that not hopefully, but I think he does fall.
So speaking of Aaron Rodgers, now in we've discussed that you're with Chris. You guys are Packers guys, right? So it's interesting to see what happens here, because I'm looking for the Jets pick. I'm like, wait a minute, the Jets were about to pick at 13, but guess what, ladies and gentlemen, you think Aaron Rodgers is going to warrant the first round pick. Do you really believe that? Is that the warrant right now?
I think it is, just because of the desperation, right? It's like, what other options do the Jets have? It's maybe only a 2-year deal, and it may be expensive for the Jets to do so. But do you want to go in to with a Super Bowl caliber roster with Jimmy G at the helm? What are your other options at this point? So I think that's what the Packers are basically holding over the Jets right now, as they fly their entire, front office out to Cali to meet with Aaron Rodgers, is basically saying, what's your other option? Maybe it's an expensive price to pay. What are you going to do with that 13th overall pick? Draft a tackle, draft a safety? Like, that's not going to give you the impact Aaron Rodgers is going to give you.
I'm going to give this guy the chills right now, because as of right now, according to your mock draft, Jordan Love, who is apparently going to just take over the reins over there in Green Bay, is going to have Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and now what you have is Jackson Smith and Njigba. Now, boy, oh boy, does that seem like it's a lot of fun to throw the ball around to those guys.
And honestly, a tight end in Dalton Kincaid, right, 2 picks later.
Wow, all right, I didn't even see that. So we got a whole new offense here in Green Bay.
I think picking the tight end at 15 for me is like, I'm apprehensive, because first-round tight ends don't typically pan out right away, and it takes a little bit of time. But with Jordan Love, it might be the best thing for us. But getting a receiver first and then the tight end, I think it allows us to kind of alleviate that, because we get a weapon in the receiver.
Is that the mindset going into the Packers draft right now, where it's like Jordan Love is still very raw, and we've seen him in a couple.
Raw he is,
I want to say as raw as far as experience is concerned, because we have seen him in spots, and he's done well. It's not like he went out there and threw up a stinker, and they're like, what are we going to do after Rodgers leaves? Obviously, they got a lot of confidence in Jordan Love, but now with the drafting of a receiver and a tight end, do you think that this is the recipe? Like, do you think this is what the Packers are going to be looking for going forward? Is this the new look offense that you think that Jordan Love will have the best chance to succeed by doing this back-to-back for their first-round picks?
Well, the problem is that they have to figure out what they have in Jordan Love right now, right? Because the contract situation, this is year 4 for him coming up. So if, he comes in and is a big dud, well, then you move on. But if he comes in and is like just okay, well, then you have to like kind of negotiate that second contract immediately. So I think you give him all the reasons to succeed. Basically, if it doesn't work out with Jackson Smith-Njigba, with Dalton Kincaid, with Christian Watson, with Romeo Doubs, with a bevy of weapons that they really never gave Aaron Rodgers the past handful of seasons, you overcorrect for your mistakes on this young quarterback, because if he comes in, throws a stinker next year and you're drafting top 10, well, then it was Jordan Love. It wasn't the talent around him. But if you really just come back with Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and then say, one of those gets hurt like they kind of were as rookies and they're in and out of the starting lineup, well, then you could talk yourself into an average or below average season from Jordan Love saying, hey, we didn't put enough around him. We're going to have to change that. I think that's not where you want to be as a franchise. So make no excuses for Jordan Love. Give him the weapons. And if it doesn't work out, move on. If it does work out, well, then the ceiling with all those weapons could be, NFC North Championship, Super Bowl championship, whatnot.
He's
year 3,
he's getting optimistic.
Year 3, Aaron Rodgers as a starter won it. It takes some time, but you never know. It's good to be in this spot.
I was just going to say, but imagine being Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers gets shipped off to New York, and all of a sudden they're just loading up offensive talent for him. He's like, wait a minute. Hold on for a second.
Now, I have a question. Do you think that outside of maybe a year or two in the past couple seasons, or the Jordan Love season, I would have liked to take T. Higgins in that spot? Outside of the last couple of years, there was never really a situation where the Packers were in a need position at wide receiver. They had Jordy Nelson, they had Greg Jennings, they had Driver. If they would have used a first-round pick the way their secondary was playing in those seasons, it would have been atrocious. It would have been a travesty. They needed to. The offense was humming at that point, so it just lined up that way. And then the quarterback pick was where it all went south in the media and things like that. But I have a question. You had mentioned something about the size with the receiver position. We see guys like Watson go in the second round, but he wasn't really super touted to be anything. He killed the combine. I think he's one of 3 guys, him, DK, and Calvin Johnson, to have the 40 time with it being as tall as they were. So is there any guys that maybe you don't look at as a top 10 or a first round pick that could kind of slip in and maybe second half next year kind of make that impact that a Watson had?
So this wide receiver class is not as good as last year's, I'll just say. So I do think that's going to be an issue. And as we saw last year, like, guys get moved up. I think we're going to see a lot of guys get drafted highly. So if talking about the guys who are maybe not those first rounders, second round guys that I think could step in and make that kind of impact, I don't think it's going to be like a Christian Watson-esque impact, but I could see Josh Downs, their North Carolina wide receiver. I could see him having like an Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of impact. Where
Alec comparison at all.
Will Alec Pierce impact where he's
were a big advocate for Alec Pierce.
I still am. I think he can play ball.
It really depends on who's slinging it over there in Indy.
Solid, held a starting job all year. Granted, a bad team, but I think that he's going to be on his way. He's going to be a good player.
Not often. So, staying in the tri-state area, all right, since we are the Mojo Market Report and we're live in New Jersey right now, we can't talk about the Jets because they just shipped off their first-round pick, so that's done. But now Daniel Jones gets paid. They tag Saquon Barkley. There's already rumblings that Saquon can get the extension that he's ever so desiring, so it'll alleviate more cap space for more talent around him. But the free agent class of receivers right now, kind of slim pickings if you don't count Odell Beckham Jr. You have Zay Flowers falling to the Giants at 25, which me as a Cowboys guy, I am not thrilled about this. Do you obviously have it, in your opinion, is it wide receiver or bust right now? Are they loading up as the talent because of the fact that the free agent class isn't all that, touted to be that great at receiver?
I don't think it's or bust, but man, you're praying, one of those 4 guys, Quentin Johnson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison, or Zay Flowers, one of those 4 falls to you, you just run in the card, you thank your lucky stars that they did, and you move on, because there's so little talent, obviously, in that receiving room right now. They could use all the help they can get. It really hampered their offense, their big playability last year. You really can't roll into next season expecting to compete for the NFC East at all if you have that same receiver room. So, yeah, I do think if one of those 4 guys is there, you take them. But if not, it's like it's going to be too much of a reach. I don't think you pigeonhole yourself there because it's still not like a great roster, right?
What did you say?
I would say if I'm the Giants, I'm really strongly considering trading a second-round pick for a wideout. Hopkins is apparently available.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that at all. Specifically, now you're about to rock Cowboys Nation right now because I'm definitely going to relay this message, and they'll see this show. I have a lot of friends in the Dallas media. I've worked for the Dallas Cowboys media department. You're going to get prepared. Here we go. Right. Buckle up, because I said something like this, which is just on your first round mock draft here. I said that why not the Dallas Cowboys, with the given situation that Zeke might be on the outs, or if they, for whatever reason, hold on to him. And I'm a Zeke guy. I will yell at the mountaintops for Zeke.
Over.
I understand that you think it's over, but I think there's value behind that short yardage. When I look at your mock draft, you have Bijan Robinson of Texas being drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. How confident are you that this could possibly happen? Jerry Jones obviously loves to make splashes. He did it 3 years ago with CeeDee Lamb. We know that he likes to make a splash here. Does he do it and draft a running back in the first round? Because this is going to send Dallas Nation, Cowboys Nation, in a little bit of an uproar, I think.
If he's there, if he's on the board, I would be floored if Jerry Jones didn't draft him. You're talking about a guy who's, a Texas running back.
Mm-hmm.
In the Cowboys kind of backyard there, who's as good a running back prospect as I've seen, and for my money, a better prospect than even Zeke was coming out of Ohio State when they drafted him top 5, but just kind of teams have wised up on that value, right? Teams are starting to see like, hey, maybe it's not worth top 5 pick to draft that guy. So if he falls there, they're going to be taking him because Jerry Jones still loves his running backs. He still pays his running backs. He still sees them as, valuable brand building positions. So, yeah, they draft Bijan if he's there. I just don't know if he'll be there that late.
So in 2028, we're going to circle back and we're going to say, now you got to pay Bijan Robinson. How much are you going to give him, Jerry? You got to pony up. It's time right now. 5th-year option. Get out of here, and we'll figure out
first running back to get $20 million per annum is Bijan Robinson.
Man, don't put that evil on me, man, because I can't do it anymore. I can't do the Cowboys have now set a record for most money allocated.
They're going to
restructure
Dak for the 11th time to pay Bijan Robinson.
I don't want to hear it.
And then in 2038, they're going to owe Dak $48 million a month.
Before we let you go, man, I got to know who is the diamond in the rough, who out of this first round, right? Because we'll stick to the first round and skill position wise, obviously, if you can, bring that to a head here. Skill position wise, even, you know what? I'll throw in the cornerbacks because defensive players will be added to Mojo before you know it. I just feel it. Is there somebody that's being like somebody that you said that about the Giants, like run up to the podium, hand in the card? That's the steal, right? For the Giants. Is there anybody that falls that is like the biggest steal of this draft? And why should we invest in him on the Mojo market once he's available?
To me, it's Quentin Johnston, the TCU wide receiver. That's kind of getting underrated. I see a lot of people have question marks about, his game translatability, his hands, whatnot. And like, pretty consistently ranked outside the top 15 or 20 players. If he goes there in the draft outside the top 15, I think whoever's getting him is getting an absolute steal because I have not, physically seen a guy capable of what he is capable of with, just his acceleration at that size, his leaping ability, his stop-start, what he can do after the catch. He reminds me of just like physically Jamar Chase plus, like 10 pounds plus 2 inches. Like he is that caliber of freak that I'm going to bet on. I'm going to bet on the hands improving when he doesn't have Max Duggan throwing him the football. I'm going to bet on things like that.
A little past 12, then. Let's just bet that he drops to 15. That would be ideal.
So, all right. So Quentin Johnston it is. You got anything else for Mike before we let him go?
Go Pack, go, baby. Yeah, Let's do it. Jordan Love, Promised Land, next season, 13-4. There we go.
Oh, my God. Can you just like I said, I want to be a fly on the wall of Aaron Rodgers' next darkness retreat where he's just sitting there like, I can't believe they drafted a receiver first round. I can't believe they drafted a tight end first round. Like he's just going to be so pissed when he's trying to throw balls over the middle.
Hey, what does he care? He's going to have Randall Cobb and Mercedes Lewis sitting next to him. What does he care?
In New York.
Come on.
In New York.
Come on. They're both available.
Dude, Mike, thank you so much for joining us, man. Listen, tell people where to follow you because, look, I'm going to be now focused in on your next mock draft and the next one after that and the next one after that. Tell people where we can follow you.
You can follow me on Twitter at PFF_Mike. And then all the takes I had, you can find the PFF draft guide. It's got 150 players in it. Going to be 250 by draft time. So all the takes, all the analysis, all in there.
All right, man. We appreciate you very much. And of course, keep rocking over at PFF, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks a lot, bud.
For sure, fellas. Go Pack Go.
Yes, sir.